Nigeria on the march again.
On the march again.
Looking for Mr. President.
On the march again.
Into the government of Nigeria.
Long live the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
We have had countries of the world that are ruled by military, and they are better. Democracy is not practiced in Saudi Arabia.
Democracy is only the system of government that actually upholds human rights, even though it is still not well upheld in this part of course, in our country.
There were the Ibadan May Day riots, where a military dictator arrested 41 protesters, including the late Bola Ige. And when there were demands for them to be released, he said they were prisoners of war.
It's like Dangote now. I mean, even from what happened recently, he will know that he doesn't have the political power.
Nothing compared to the kind of terror that they say Muhammadu Buhari and Tunde Diagbon brought upon Nigeria just before they were overthrown by Babangida in 1985.
Come for me.
So Abiola dies on the 7th of July, 1998. Before that, Abacha died on the 8th of June, 1998. So with these players out, Nigeria had a pathway towards democracy. Handed over to a military dictator called Abdulsalami Abubakar, who was said to be reluctant because he knew how the military was murderous. But eventually came in, set a very clear, immediately pathway, working with politicians, eased a lot of the restrictions on movement, on speech. Immediately with Abdulsalami Abubakar, there was some ease, but we were all suspicious because we'd seen this movie before. But as promised, elections were held. I remember that campaign. It was an exciting. Let me tell you how much I remember that campaign. My favorite candidate was Chief Olu Falaye, who was the opposing candidate to Olusegun Obasanjo of the People's Democratic Party. And I remember one advert of Olu Falaye said, sat down and looked at the camera the way I'm looking at you and said, this is a time for change, a change from a country that doesn't work to a country that works, a change from freedom and poverty to abundance, a change from bondage and poverty to abundance and freedom. And I present myself as the candidate of that change. I remember that advert so well. I don't know where I remember it. When I ran for office as information prefect in Mayflower that year, I copied his advert copy, word for word. I was so inspired. Democracy. Sweet.
This is the pot. There's nothing inside.
On May 29, 1999, the nation couldn't believe it. Olusegun Obasanjo was sworn in as the first democratically elected president in about 20 years. And here we are. In that time, democracy hasn't really delivered what it promised. I will admit. We had hopes. People left abroad and came back under Obasanjo. Many of them were disappointed. But you take the percentage of growth on any human development index, and compare it with what we had under the military comparatively. Democracy has been better. People say things like, oh, there's no democracy because newspaper was shut down, somebody was arrested, and those are unfortunate and do not deserve to exist. But it's not comparable to what I grew up seeing under Babangida and Abacha. And for those who reminded us, when those of us children that don't pay attention to history, Nothing compared to the kind of terror that they say Muhammadu Buhari and Tunde Diagbon brought upon Nigeria just before they were overthrown by Babangida in 1985.
During military rule, most of the time, people are not locked in police cells. Now, they could be arrested by police, but if it's the military people that have issues with you, you're locked up as if, you are a person that the military considers as a criminal or as a dissident. Now, you can see that the treatment is as if you're fighting an enemy that you captured in war or something. That's the way it was like. And that's why I called it 50-50 chance.
There were the Ibadan May Day riots, where a military dictator arrested 41 protesters, including the late Bola Ige. And when there were demands for them to be released, he said they were prisoners of war. A popular song, Lagbaja's song, when he said, "Egbadura fun wa, prisoner of war, pray for the youth." That's where he got that from. Bola Ige was called a prisoner of war when he was arrested alongside one of the 41 prisoners of war, included former governor Lam Adesina, the late Lam Adesina, Comrade Ola Oni, and the editor of the Sunday Tribune at the time, Femi Adeoti.
You have to understand that the time that we're talking about was a different time entirely. We're talking about a military regime. We're talking about repression. People were like, that was the height of letter bombs. You just wake up in the morning, open letter, and boof. I was be like, what is all this? For all human beings.
Because it's a traumatic experience, having people shot by military assassins and all of that, But if I say this, you'll be shocked. And that's that the people that suffer the most during military rule are military men. The career is destroyed.
But there's a foundational angle we're not looking at. So there's an African proverb that, you cripple man, the load on your head is bent. And the cripple man said, you are looking at the load, you are not looking at my leg. The young people of today that are craving for military rule, I really don't blame them. While I was in primary, secondary school, we're doing a little bit of history and social studies. Today, history is totally erased. A lot of people, I've met people who never knew that President Buhari was once a president. I think it's because they were not orientated enough. I mean, the military regime was so bad that a soldier said during military era, 30 soldiers cannot gather together in the cantonment to be talking. Wow. It's mutiny. You must either be one or two. Yes. It's that bad, even within themselves. Soldiers cannot gather in theory. When it is theory, they will say you are planning a coup. Mm-hmm. So you must either be one or two, and even that two, within 3 seconds, you must disperse. So there must be concerted efforts for history to be reintroduced, for people to know where we're coming from. Yes, is democracy where it's meant to be? The truth is we are not there yet. But to be honest, we are not as bad as we used to be in the past. Yes, there are metrics to measure this. I mean, I'm a data person. Let's look at the growth in the telecommunication sector. Let's look at the growth in our infrastructure. Let's look at social development. It might not be where we want it to be, but it's not as bad as what it was in the past. Because when people say good old days, okay, what's the population of Nigeria in 1970? What's the population of Nigeria in 1980? A lot of new projects have come up. A lot of new policies have come up. A lot of economic interventions have been made that were not available in the past. Under military, people were going to Nitel to queue for Nitel units to make phone call. Yeah. Today, it was democracy that brought in the deregulation in that sector. Even in the whole electoral ecosystem that we are still battling with, democracy has actually brought in a lot of sanity there. I mean, we are now living in a country where people can wake up and say they want to protest. We had them sacks. We had enough is enough that was spearheaded by someone like Mr. Chude and others. Under military, they can't even try it. They will have disappeared. Yes. Okay. So what I'm saying in summary is, democracy might not have taken us to where we wanted to be, but the fact is, where we wanted to be, but we are not where we used to be.
We have had countries of the world that are ruled by military, and they are better for it. So it's not all democracy. Democracy is not practiced in Saudi Arabia. They are living a good life. Democracy is not practiced in United Arab Emirates. Yet they're living fine. I think what we need to do is to look for that form of government that really suits us, where corruption will be eliminated, reduced to the barest minimum. At least people's rights can be respected, and then the welfare of the people can be taken care of. Once you have that, people actually don't want to care about the name you call the system of government that.
But what about the place of human rights? The fundamental human rights now, because I think if we are saying that democracy is not, because that's one of the tenets, that's one of the components of democracy. I'm of the opinion that democracy is only the system of government that actually upholds human rights, even though it is still not well upheld in this part of course, in our country. But I still believe that it is only democracy that can give us that thing.
Have freedom of expression. That was not permitted. And I use the words very strongly. Permitted. You could say now today that Tinubu and his government, they are, for example, they are incompetent. You understand? And nobody is going to come and visit you. No security people will come and badge or break down your door and kidnap you in the middle of the night. That happened a lot, especially during Abacha's time. Jonathan was one of the most maligned head of states. And I remember he said once that he didn't use up to 10%, if I was correct, I'm not really sure, of his of the power that the Constitution bestowed upon him. You're free. You could have freedom of association, freedom of movement. There's a protest that's going on. Most of the time during that era, people die, and if you go to look for them, you are also arrested. People are shot on the streets. I'm not saying it's always like it's a war zone. No, that's not what I mean. I meant if you now dare protest. That's what I'm trying to say. So it's not that, yes, you have everyday society and all of that. And of course also, what has changed? The country is more stable. Because I remember when coups happen, I remember how everybody has to be running helter-skelter, not to be shut down. And then the country was always living in that perpetual fear of it could happen today. And of course, from the break up of the First Republic and the coups of the 1960s to the coup, or coups and attempted coups of 70s, 80s, 90s. So it's normal that, it was part of the national psyche that you are not really sure of life. Anything can happen. Unlike now that if there's any gunshot at all, well, at least in cosmopolitan Lagos and other major cities like that, that security people will go there, and it's not some military people. So that's part of what has changed. Yes, there's now more infrastructure. Several nations all over the world wants to work with us and all of that, whether it's from the Western Bloc or the Eastern Bloc and all of that. When there's stability, it's the truth that there will be development, And military rule is never a stable government, because even they themselves are not sure of what will happen.
The significance of June 12 and what they stood for is not necessarily in the acts that in the act of sacrificing their lives, because nobody ever wants to die. The issue here is they had a vision and they had plans, and those things can actually still be actualized.
This current event also is a failure of history. It's where, is it history I'll call it, or a failure of government? When I say government now, that is government not telling the story of how much it costs to even procure this democracy, how much it cost in blood. People died, people were assassinated, and all manner of things happened. Well, after the June 12 annulment, major things happened every year. From 1994 down till 1998 when Abacha died, and up till 1999 when when the longest period of democracy began in Nigeria. Almost every year things were happening. It was just drama, except that the drama was bloody.
MKO Abiola, progress.
It started first from mega protests, where things would be shut down, almost completely. School wasn't normal because you can't even really go to school, all of those things were happening. People were being shot. I remember the death of Ken Saro-Wiwa. I remember Kudirat's death after the arrest of Abiola. I remember the phantom coup of 1995. I remember the arrest of Obasanjo and Yaradua. And then I remember the coup of 1998. But I think 97 into early 98, where Dia and the rest of them were arrested. And I also remember the arrest and detention. Now, when I say arrest, you just take it from me that arrest will go with detention. Many pro-democracy activists. I remember the sacrifice of the people that started ADECO. I remember also the Ekpetedo Declaration of Abiola. I remember all of those things. So it was a whole lot. People need to understand what the country went through and all of that. You see, something that cost so much blood. I remember Chris Anyanwu was arrested for a coup, for God's sake. A journalist, a woman. Which coup? Kunle Ajibade and the rest of them. People like Bola Tinubu, who is our president today, and all of the NADECO people had to run out of the country, except for few of them that were in the country that cannot be arrested, like Tony Enahoro, or people like Ganifawa Emi, who, of course, is a serial protester, and they are always protesting. It's always like pro-democracy protests and all of that.
For me, it's a little bit better to know that they stood for something and that was beyond them, and it was about something that was about, like, even beyond us, their children. It was about our future, my children's future. It wasn't just about like a name or anything. Like, it was more than that. There was substance to it, and that helps. It helps.
MKO had no choice. If he didn't do that, it will become irrelevant in life. And he will be known as a coward. Do you understand? So, matters have come to a head. And he needed to just make a clear statement.
You would have expected him to be more calculative about his sojourn or about his voyage into the political terrain. It's like Dangote now. He understands that. Even from what happened recently, he will know that he doesn't have the political power. You understand? So he has economic power, but the people who control the politics, people who control power, can muzzle you, can frustrate you. And that was really the kind of thing that happened to Abiola. But like Dangote now, he is very determined not to go into politics. You understand? Because he saw that his uncle, who gave him that business thing, Dantata, was successful and he did not do politics. So he stayed. But Abiola was undecided. And like I said, what actually led him into politics shouldn't have been the reason for his voyage into politics. That shows that your vision or your idea of politics was personal. Because he had followed Simbiat's advice. He had followed it to the letter until that incident happened. So when you get angry and then your anger has now taken you to to make a kind of phenomenal decision, without necessarily sitting down to say, is it really worth it? You understand? And then that's what will happen. It was a ragtag kind of decision.
So he didn't have a choice because he would just have become irrelevant. So he had to make a stand, and he knew that it would cost him. Although at the initial period he didn't know that it would cost him as much as it later did. But his name is written in gold now, forever. When you're talking about the father of modern day democracy, you will not mention Obasanjo, you mention MKO. Not because MKO is a better person than Obasanjo, but because he sacrificed his own life to make sure that we'll be able to have this day that we have now.